So I'm just finishing those settings. And today we are going to be talking about building security that scales. And it's a practical look at NIST, CSF, and CIS control frameworks. So without further ado, let me go ahead and share my presentation with you. And here we go. So welcome to today's webinar, Building Security That Scales. So let me start with a story that might sound familiar. Last month, I spoke with Lydia, who's the CEO of a growing manufacturing company. She told me we just lost a $2 million contract because we couldn't answer their security questionnaire in time. They needed proof of our cybersecurity controls, and all we had was a folder of random IT documentation that really didn't make sense to anyone. And Lydia's not alone. Every day, business leaders like you are discovering that cybersecurity isn't just about preventing hackers anymore. It's about proving you're secure enough to do business with. So here's what we're going to accomplish during this webinar. By the end of the session, you'll know exactly how to build a right-sized security program that not only protects your business, but it actually helps you to win and keep customers. We'll show you how to align with NIST Cybersecurity Framework 2.0 and CIS controls. We'll teach you what matters, give you what you need to start, and arm you to make an informed call on whether to start your compliance journey with an in-house team or team up with an expert partner to get you compliant. And the outcomes, either way, will be repeatable security controls that work, can lower insurance premiums, faster vendor approvals, and no more scrambling when customers ask about your cybersecurity. Before we dive in further, though, let me give you a brief overview of who we are at Iler Networking Computing and our background. So we're a managed services and security provider, and we've been celebrating 31 years in business this year. Our headquarters are here in Sheffield Village, Ohio, but we also have two other locations, branches in Iowa and South Carolina. We can do fully managed IT, which means we are the IT department for small to mid-sized businesses. But for other companies that have IT, we can do what's called co-managed, and we assist those companies that do have an IT department with their cybersecurity or compliance needs. We always answer the phone live during working hours, so it kind of frustrates me when we call a company and then you have to go through a whole series of prompts before you actually get to talk to someone. If you call us during our working hours, you're going to talk to someone live. No more prompts. And we also have assurance service plans that fit your IT needs. Every company is a little bit different, and so we have 4 different plans, and we can customize those plans as well to be very specific to exactly what you need. We also offer compliance as a service. And so as we're talking about some compliances here today, if you don't feel like you have the expertise to do it in staff or you need some extra help, we're here to come alongside and help you. And all of our techs are CJIS certified. CJIS is the Criminal Justice Information System. And so it's created by the FBI for the law enforcement agencies that we help support. All of our techs have been background checked, fingerprinted, and are qualified to support law enforcement, and so we're also qualified to support your businesses as well. So one of the recent honors that we have is called the MSP Titans of the Industry Award. And an MSP, again, is a managed services provider. And this was a red carpet gala that was held in Beverly Hills. It was definitely outside of my comfort zone. And so it was actually hosted at the iconic Beverly Hills Hilton. That's the same venue where the Golden Globe Awards take place. The evening was truly unforgettable. The event featured appearances by Jay Leno and Magic Johnson, which added to the excitement and prestige of the night. But we were honored to be recognized as one of only 10 managed services providers globally, named as finalists for excellence in one of the key markets that we support. And this recognition is a testament to the level of commitment, innovation, and service that we provide to all of our clients. Being selected at this level underscores the trust our clients have placed in us and also reflects our relentless pursuit of excellence in IT support, cybersecurity, and compliance. So let's talk about what we're here, obviously, to listen to today. And so for those of you that are attending live, I'll be answering any questions that you may have after the presentation. If you have any questions during the presentation, please enter them by clicking on the question mark button, not the chat button that's in the webinar window, and then I'll address those at the end. So here's the first problem most businesses face. They think that cybersecurity sort of as a project. So let's install some antivirus, set up a firewall, and we're good to go. But here's the reality. Projects end, and cyber risk never does, and it is continually increasing. So think about this. You wouldn't run your accounting as a one-time project, right? You have quarterly reviews, monthly reconciliations, annual audits, and security really needs the same discipline. What scales is thinking like a program, not a project. So what does this mean? Quarterly roadmaps instead of random IT purchases, policy reviews that keep you current as your business grows, control health checks to catch problems before they become emergencies. So here's a practical example. When you decide to change your password policy, it should automatically update across all your systems from Microsoft 365 or Google, your single sign-on systems, and your servers. And the evidence should be captured automatically. No fire drills, no scrambling during audits. This is what we mean by govern once, implement everywhere. The frameworks that we're going to discuss today give us a common language to do this exactly at the right level for your business size and risk. But before we dive in, let's translate the alphabet soup of cybersecurity into plain English. And you may want to take either a screenshot or a picture of this slide for future reference. It's not something I expect you to memorize. So the frameworks we're going to be covering are NIST CSF. We'll start with that first. NIST is the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and CSF is the cybersecurity framework. Think of this as your cybersecurity management playbook with 6 main chapters. That's to govern, identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. So the website for NIST CSF is nist.gov/cyberframework, or you can search in a search engine for that as well. The next framework is CIS controls, and it's in version 8. So CIS is the Center for Internet Security. It's a nonprofit that started in the year 2000. As I mentioned, these controls are in their 8th version. There are 18 specific security actions prioritized by what protects you most. So IG1, or Implementation Group 1, is the baseline security for everyone. But then IG2 adds depth, and IG3 then is for high-risk environments. They also include or have CIS benchmarks. So think of CIS controls as the prioritized security playbook and CIS benchmarks as the device-by-device hardening checklist. The website for CIS is cissecurity.org, and you can find information on both the controls and the benchmarks there. So some of these terms we'll talk about. We've got CAS, or Compliance as a Service, and this is outsourcing your security program management. vCISO is a virtual chief information security officer. It's a part-time security executive without that 6-figure salary that they would need if you were hiring them full-time. So we do that in a fractional standpoint. There are questionnaires. There's ones that your customers send to you, or possibly if you have to do PCI compliance or any other framework compliance, that they have those. So you've got DDQ, SIG, CIQ as well. And then these are basically just different flavors of prove you're secure questionnaires. Some of the technologies we're going to talk about are MFA, which stands for multi-factor authentication. This is like needing both a key and a code in order to enter someplace. We've got EDR and MDR, that's endpoint and management detection and response. So think of this as your security guard for your computers 24/7. And then PAM and JIT is privileged access management, or just in time. The purpose of this is limiting who has admin access and when they have admin access. Again, don't worry about memorizing these. Focus on the concepts. So, why frameworks and why now? So let me tell you why this matters now more than ever. It's not just about hackers anymore. It's about business survival. So take insurance, for example. Remember when your cyber insurance agent just asked you, do you have antivirus? Those days are over. And now they're asking, do you have multi-factor authentication on everything? Can you prove your endpoint detection is working? Are your backups truly immutable, which means they're unhackable? What is your SLA or service level agreement for patching critical vulnerabilities? And when did you last test your incident response? So in many cases, just answering the questionnaire isn't going to be sufficient. You have to actually back up those questions with proof for your answers. If you don't have this proof, it can be really that you have no coverage. The insurance company can refuse to cover you, or they're going to jump up that price of the insurance premium. There's also legal protection. So states like Ohio and Iowa now offer safe harbor laws. Safe harbor law means that if you can prove you follow recognized frameworks such as NIST, CSF, or CIS, you get legal protection in case something goes wrong. It's like having cybersecurity insurance built into the law. But here's the biggest pressure: your customers. That manufacturer I mentioned at the start, her customer was a Fortune 500 company that got breached because one of their vendors had weak security. And now they require every vendor to follow and prove that they follow the cybersecurity frameworks for protection. Even if you're not regulated, chances are your customers probably are. And their compliance requirements flow down to you. No proof of security means no contract. In many cases, it's that simple. And this isn't something that's around the corner and it's coming, it's already here. So the question is, will you be ready or will you be scrambling like Lydia was? Excuse me. So now let me introduce you two of your new best friends. So the NIST CSF 2.0 framework and CIS Controls 8.0. And think of them as a perfect partnership. So NIST Cybersecurity Framework 2.0 is like your security program manager. It's going to give you 6 outcome-focused areas. First is govern, and that's to set the rules and assign responsibility. Identify, know what you have and know what needs protecting. And then protect, put safeguards in place to protect that information and the data. Detect, which is to spot problems quickly. Respond, handle incidents effectively. And then recover, which means to get back to business fast after you have some type of cyber incident. So this is your what needs to happen framework. And if you notice this, the last 3 are after an event happens. So, half of this whole framework is, what do you do when an event happens? Because most organizations are going to experience a cyber event sometime in their organization lifespan. Now let's talk about CIS controls, and this is like your security implementer. It gives you 18 specific prioritized actions. So the first, IG1 or implementation group 1, is your basic security for everyone. Think of this as your foundation, and all organizations should do this. IG2 then adds depth for companies that have more risk or larger attack services. And IG3 is for organizations with high exposure or sophisticated threats. Excuse me. So here's the beauty. You use NIST CSF to measure and communicate your security program, and use CIS controls to actually build it. This approach prevents tool-first thinking, where you buy random security products hoping they're going to work together. Instead, you build a coherent program that your customers, insurers, and auditors immediately understand. So let me show you how these frameworks actually work together in practice. So let's take the protect function from NIST CSF. And this maps specifically to specific CIS controls. Some of those controls are CIS 4. This control is the use of admin privileges, so you want to limit who can make system changes. CIS 5 is account management, controls who has access to what. CIS 6 is access control. This, you enforce the principle of least privilege. What that means is you give every user, account, service, device, and process only the minimum access that it needs. And that's includes permissions, data, and time window, what is required to perform its legitimate task, and nothing more. So some quick examples. Help desk can reset passwords, but they can't grant global admin. Developers can read production logs, but they can't write to production databases. Admin privileges via PAM for 2 hours with MFA, but then auto revoke, so that doesn't stay there, and bad actors can use that to access things they shouldn't have access to. Some of the common pitfalls we see here are permanent admin accounts that are tied to users that access it day to day, and they have access 24/7, 365. Orphaned access after roles change or departures from the company. So if you have a user that hasn't been with the company for a while, especially if they have elevated privileges, then that's a risk. Sharing accounts instead of using named identities. Everyone should have their own user account, and you should never share that password with anyone. Those sharing accounts can lead to people getting access because you have one username and one password, and multiple people have access to those. Also, if you do end up having some type of cyber incident, you want to be able to track to see where this incident came through. If you end up having a shared account, then anyone that uses that account could be responsible, and it's going to be very hard to track down how that incident happened and to be able to block that. Many of these compliance frameworks require you to not use shared accounts. That actually is breaking the compliance. All right, CIS 7 is continuous vulnerability management. That's finding and fixing security holes. CIS 8 is audit log management, track what's actually happening. CIS 10 is email and web browser protections, block malicious content. Make sure if you go out on the web or get an email with malware on there, it's blocked before your users have a chance to open them. CIS 11 is malware defenses. So we stop bad malware before it can infiltrate your systems. CIS 12 is data recovery. Ensure that you can restore from backup. In the event that you do end up with ransomware, you don't want to cave into that ransomware because we'll talk about that later. Or go check our cybersecurity webinar that we did on that, on reasons why you should never, ever cave into ransomware. But it's super important because if you do get hit with ransomware, your backups are your best defense, so you can get back up and running quickly. And then there are two more that I don't have on this slide. CIS 14 is security awareness training. That's where you educate your own team. Your employees are your biggest risk. And CIS 16 is application security, making sure your software is very secure. So start with IG1 controls across all these areas. That's your foundation. Then expand IG2 where your risk and business values justify the investment in doing those things. The real magic happens in the evidence. So every control you implement creates artifacts. So you can do screenshots, reports, or logs that satisfy both NIST CSF requirements and customer questionnaires. So one piece of evidence, multiple uses. This mapping means you're not just checking boxes, you're going to build a security program that actually makes business sense. So here's your roadmap to success, from security chaos to security confidence. And we'll do this in 3 phases. The first phase would be your first 90 days. We call this your foundation phase. This is where you're going to write down your security policies and assign owners. You'll build your risk register, which is what could go wrong and how you want to prevent that. Classify your asset and data, what matters most. Implement IG1 controls across the board. Start your evidence binder. And you can kind of summarize this as getting your security house in order. So after that, you're ready to move on to phase 2, which is typically months 3 through 9. And this is your credibility phase. This is where you establish vulnerability management with real SLAs. These are your service level agreements, the times for getting all these things done that you're documenting. You're going to implement secure configuration baselines, build third-party risk management processes, make sure everyone in your supply chain is doing what they need to do, and they're not going to be a risk to you. Tune your alerting to reduce false alarms. We had to switch. One of the main tools we use is an MSP. It's a RMM tool, which is remote monitoring and management. And what happened is we started getting all these false alerts along with our actual alerts, and it was wasting a significant amount of time. One of the issues that you have to be careful with, if you start getting a lot of alerts, then you start tuning out these alerts, and that's very dangerous. You don't want to do that. So make sure your alerting is very accurate and your false alarms are not coming across, and only the true alarms you need to be aware of are coming across. And then you run your first tabletop exercise. I'm going to talk a little bit about what a tabletop exercise is, and then establish meaningful KPIs. These are your key performance indicators. And this is where you prove then that you're not just checking those boxes, but you're actually managing the risk. After that, we dive into phase 3, which is to scale and automate. This is your efficiency phase. So this is where you automate identity management, for example, using the JLM strategy, which stands for joiner, leaver, mover. The purpose of this is to automate the identity lifecycle so people always have the right access at the right time for the right reason and nothing extra. So there are 3 stages in an employee's lifecycle. There's the joiner. This is the new hire. So for that, you create their identity, you assign a baseline apps that they need access to and their licenses. You enroll them in MFA and to access the devices based on what role they're going to play. Then a mover is when that role or team or location changes. So you have to add the new access and remove the old access. Remember, least privilege by default. And then leaver is when that employee leaves the company or is terminated. And you need to instantly disable their accounts, revoke any tokens, reclaim licenses and devices, and transfer data. So make sure data is kept based on your data retention policies. For most organizations, this can be 7 years. So we'll talk about JLM a little bit later in the presentation. So implement policy as code. So policy as code, or PAC, is the practice of writing security, compliance, and operational rules in machine-readable code. This way they can be versioned, they can be tested and enforced automatically across systems, just like application code. We want to set up continuous control monitoring. So let's face it, if you leave the monitoring to a manual human process, the ball will get dropped. Some people may remember the time when you always had to do a daily swap of backup tapes and then take them off-site before hybrid cloud backup became popular. So many clients would have skipped backups because the person responsible was either out sick, they were on vacation, they forgot, or unfortunately, they were just too lazy and decided they weren't going to do the backup today. And so those things generate a risk. We want to automate things to help really shrink down your risk footprint. And provide quarterly executive scorecards. So these provide a concise business level review of your organization's security and compliance program. We say do this quarterly so executives can see the risk, progress, and ROI, which will help them make decisions and assign resources without diving really into all the technical details. The importance of doing these quarterly is making sure that security doesn't become out of sight, out of mind. And this is where security becomes a competitive advantage, not just a cost center. Most importantly, each phase is going to build upon the previous one. And that way you don't skip any steps. So let's get practical now. In your first 90 days, you're going to build a foundation that everything else depends on. And here's exactly what that looks like. So we're going to start with governance. And this isn't bureaucracy, it's clarity. We're going to create a risk register that actually lists what could hurt your business. Some risk examples would be business email compromise. When you get an email and it's fraudulent, and by that, then you end up trying and possibly do a fraudulent wire or ACH transaction. There's also weak backups or untested restores. What this can do is if you get hit with ransomware or just have data corruption, which happens, you could have data loss or a long downtime if that backup is not viable. So write policies that people can understand and follow. Access control, patching, backup and disaster recovery, acceptable use, incident response, business continuity. These are all things that are important to plan for and you have in place then should an incident occur. And always assign owners. Someone needs to be responsible for each of these areas. Now, next we'll implement your baseline controls. So multi-factor authentication everywhere. And we prefer phishing resistant methods for administrators. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. Endpoint detection and response, EDR with 24/7 monitoring, or the MDR. And this is your security guard that never sleeps. So the MDR is going to be an actual human at a data center or security operations center that monitors threats 24/7, and they are able to respond to in minutes. Excuse me. So the difference here is if you only have EDR, EDR can detect an issue and can even open up a ticket. But if it runs into an issue that it can't remediate in the middle of the night, then your IT team isn't going to get that ticket until they get in the morning. And that could be, 12 hours from then. By that time, a cyber criminal could have infiltrated your network and already have stolen data or embedded malware that could be tracking passwords, private information such as social security numbers, credit card information, or they could be getting ready to encrypt all your files. With MDR, as soon as an alert comes in, a human is actively looking at the threat and can take the steps to block it before it gets access to your systems. Patch management with SLAs. Critical vulnerabilities need to be patched within 14 days and no exceptions. And so as soon as, for example, if you're running Windows, Microsoft releases a critical patch, they have already published what that patch is. They publish what the patch is fixing and what that vulnerability is. Bad actors out there now know, hey, there's a hole in the ship or a chink in the armor. And so now we can write software that will look to take advantage for an unpatched system, and then they can infiltrate that system. Backups with a 3-2-1 rule plus immutability. The 3-2-1 rule is you want to have 3 copies of all your data on 2 different media types, with at least one of them being off-site. and make sure the immutability part is hackers can't delete them. Test restores monthly at a minimum. The solution that we use actually does it daily. Many people that are think backing up to an external hard drive, or even worse, to a thumb drive or a flash drive, is a sufficient backup. These are not immutable and are often encrypted if you get hit with ransomware. So your email security stack, there's tools out there like SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. These are set to reject, plus protect against impersonation. So impersonation is basically stopping attackers from sending email that looks like it's from you or your company, or specifically your executives. So here's the key that most organizations miss. You want to capture evidence as you go. So screenshots of MSA enforcement, EDR coverage reports, patch compliance dashboards, backup restore logs, change tickets. All this information is the evidence that will help improve that you're in compliance. So store all of this in your evidence binder organized by a control ID, and that's going to make it easy to find then when you need to find it. Don't skip data classification. You can't protect what you don't understand. So classify your data as either public, internal, or sensitive. And then once you have it classified, that drives everything else, from backup frequency to access controls to retention policies. Phase 2 is where you evolve from we have security tools to we manage security risk. And here's how. So move beyond we scan sometimes to regular scanning cadence, weekly at least for critical systems. Risk-based remediation windows. So risk-based remediation windows prioritizes fixes by business risk, considering security, asset exposure and criticality, business impact, and active exploitation. So as a rule of thumb, if you have an actively exploited items, those need to be mitigated within 24 hours with full fixes within 48 to 72 hours. Critical items need to be done within 7 days, high priority items within 30 days, and medium priority items within 90 days. Exception tracking with business justification. What this means is any vulnerability or control gap that can't be fixed inside the SLA must have time-boxed, documented exception that explains why the delay is necessary and how risk is being contained. So you just don't want to say, oh, well, we can't do it in that amount of time. It's okay. It's not. And so make sure that you track that. Implementation of secure configuration baselines using CIS benchmarks will create standard hardened configurations for all your system types. Do your automated drift detection. So this is an alert should happen when someone changes something they shouldn't. If someone adds an administrator that shouldn't have administrative access, they have access to maybe folders or files that, again, are outside of their purview. So you want alerts to come in. One of the things that we started doing is for Microsoft 365 and Google, if someone authenticates from outside the region where they typically are. For example, most of our clients are here in the United States. But if someone who authenticates to Microsoft 365 in the US, and then all of a sudden they have an authentication or an attempted authentication from Russia or China or India, that's a red flag. So we have automatic controls in place that will lock those accounts, open up a ticket to make sure that someone doesn't get into those systems, and then we can look and see what's going on there. Change control process for legitimate modifications, because there are times when you need to add new admins or give new employees access to those folders. So make sure that you have that control process documented. Build a process for vendor security. Do an intake form for new suppliers, and then do risk tiering based on the data access and business criticality. So if you have someone that's coming into your system, even someone as simple as an HVAC vendor that is accessing the system, do they need to have access to your internal network? Because if they put a laptop on that network and it has malware on there, now your whole network's at risk. So you need to basically do risk tiering based on what data they need to have access to and business criticality. Do baseline security requirements for each tier. That's super important. And then do annual reviews leveraging existing evidence. So make sure that you can start a relationship with one vendor, and as that relationship grows, maybe the data accesses grow with that. So you need to make sure that all those things are in place, and make sure too that your vendors are doing their due diligence from a cybersecurity standpoint. So metrics do matter. So start measuring, what actually indicates security health. We have things like mean time to detect, or MDDT, and mean time to respond, MTTR, to incidents. One of the things that we've seen with certain types of malware, for example, ransomware 5 years ago, as soon as ransomware got access to your system, it would do as much as it could to encrypt your files and then demand your ransom to get those files unencrypted and hoping you didn't have a good backup. What we're seeing now with ransomware is when malware gets onto the system, it sits there silently as possible and tries to get access to all your systems, from email to your ERP system to accounting to file servers. And it tries to get as much information about your company as it can. And there are other attacks that it might do, but it could be on there for 60 to 90 days before it even does anything malicious besides taking information and getting access to systems that clearly shouldn't have. And that's where the one of the big threats is. Once the bad actors have access to what they need to, they can at that time then do whatever bad deed they're going to do. And so the mean time to respond then is, once you find a threat and detect that threat, how soon is that threat mitigated? And so it's very important to track these things. Track your percentage of assets patched within your SLA. For those critical alerts, are they all done within 14 days? Do you have other alerts that haven't been done maybe for months? Phishing simulation failure trends. We should see this be decreasing. So just like for our kids in school, they're given information and then they're tested that information. We recommend that all employees go through phishing training, so it teaches them how to not just spot, but what they should do when they spot a phishing attempt. Notify IT and those types of things. But unfortunately, even after going through training, employees will click on things that they shouldn't. And so phishing simulation will simulate phishing. It sends actual emails out. Excuse me. Okay, the phishing simulation actually sends emails out and then records what employees click on things that they shouldn't have clicked on. Again, it's not to beat them up, but when you detect something like that, it gives you opportunity for further education. And hopefully that training then will stick next time so they won't click on something they shouldn't have. Again, employees are your biggest risk, and clicking on something that you didn't have is a huge risk to your company. Backup restore success rates and recovery time objectives. How long does it take if and when you need to restore data? And was it actually successful? You don't want to have corrupt data, ransomware, something like that, and then go to restore it and find your backup's not good. So these all metrics tell a story about your security maturity that customers and insurers understand. I'm going to take one more drink before I start this slide. Okay, a lot of information here. So phase 3, scale and automate. So this is where security transforms into a cost center to a competitive advantage. Here's what sustainability looks like. Implement automated joiners, movers, and leavers processes, like we mentioned earlier. So again, new employees get appropriate access automatically. Role changes update permissions across all systems. Departing employees lose access immediately. And least privilege access with just-in-time elevation for administrative tasks. We talked about policy as a code as well. Your security configurations become enforceable code with baseline configurations deployed automatically. And this will give you the automated alerts then when the system drifts from the standards. Changes require approval and create audit trails, so you can see the whole thing. If there is an event, how did that software or bad actor get access to those systems? And you go back through these logs in order to find that out. So your controls will monitor themselves. You've got real-time dashboard showing control health. You can see everything in a nice, quick snapshot, so you don't have to dig through reports and do time-consuming things. Everything's right there at one view. We have color-coded ones, so use the green, yellow, red. So green's good, yellow's and red's bad. Automatic evidence collection. So make sure that you get this evidence collected and you store this at different time frames so that if you get audited, you have customers that come in or even if you do have an event, you can show and prove that you've done your due diligence. So with the continuous monitoring, your controls monitor themselves. And we talked about this, but quarterly executive scorecards also with trend analysis. So the level of automation is going to help deliver reduced human error, because most breaches come from the employees and they actually start with mistakes. You've got audit ready evidence by default. There's no more scrambling for it. It's already there. So you get notified you're going to have an audit. You take the information, you hand it over to them. You're good to go. Faster response to customer security questionnaires. That's going to help make your supply chain more comfortable with continuing to do business with you. And then actually lower operational costs as manual processes disappear. So when customers ask about your security, you don't schedule meetings to gather information. You send them a link to your collection of evidence. So we'll be discussing different types of evidence next, but collecting evidence will have different timelines based on that category of evidence. So here's an example of timelines. We want to collect evidence on a rolling cadence so that you're always audit ready. And that's going to be continuous collection for system logs, alerts, and configuration baselines. We can do weekly collections for vulnerability scans or patch reports and access to change logs. That can go to monthly for control attestation, which is your backups being tested, your EDR policies, your asset and inventory diffs. Quarterly then for privileged access reviews, network segmentation tests, phishing and training results, and risk register updates. And then event driven whenever a material change occurs. So if there's a new system policy or just a new system, if we have a policy change or an actual incident happens, those are different event driven ones where we need to document. So before a formal audit happens, do a 30 to 60 day pre-audit sweep to do a gap check and snapshot reports. Keep evidence immutably stored. That means that it can't be changed. And make sure you retain all of those for 12 to 24 months. The 12 to 24 months should probably be in your regulator or contract. But also with that, make sure you have clear ownership and timestamps with all of those. So even though you're continually replacing these, you do want to keep a history of them as well for your reference. All right, so let me give you your security shopping list. So we'll cover 10 controls that deliver the most protection for your investment. And these aren't just security measures, they're business enablers. So each of these have what you need to do and the evidence that you're going to need to do or keep for your records. So we've got two screens here, two slides. So we're going to start with multi-factor authentication. We've covered that, but it's obviously super important. Make sure it's everywhere, not just email. We want to use phishing resistant methods for administrator accounts. So this means for everyone with admin powers, we're going to use sign-in methods that can't be tricked by fake websites or text codes. The best options are security keys, which could be tiny USB devices, kind of like a card key for your account, or built-in sign-ins like Face ID, Touch ID, or passkeys. So these tools can check that you're on the real website or app before they unlock, so scammers can't steal a code and then reuse that. The evidence you'll use here is the MFA enforcement report showing the coverage percentages. Next, we're going to talk about endpoint detection and response with a 24/7 managed detection and response, or the MDR. So think of this again as your security guard for every single computer watching 24/7. This is going to automatically respond to threats while you and your IT team sleep. The evidence here that you want to keep are your EDR coverage reports and threat detection logs. So when you do have a threat, how is that threat brought in? How is it remediated? And make sure that information is stored. Number 3 is vulnerability management with SLAs and proof of closure. So this is your regular scanning and defining fixed timelines and verification. So make sure that if you do have an issue, that those issues are truly fixed and verified. Just don't assume that the issue is taken care of because the scan is not finding it anymore. Critical vulnerabilities. Again, make sure that 14 days is the maximum before that those are applied. So the evidence here is going to be your vulnerability scans, your remediation reports, and then your closure verification. How did you make sure that that vulnerability is no longer there? Your email security stack. There are tools out there, SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. These ensure that only your true mail server can send and receive emails on your domain, and they've really become popular over the last several years. Even 10 years ago, 5 years ago, it was very easy to spoof an email domain. So you could send out, like our domain is iler.com, iler.com. If we did not have these things in place, you could set up your own mail server and send an email saying that you have iler.com, and you could send that out to our clients and tell them all types of things, try to get them to send a payment to a different ACH transaction, bank records, those types of things. So by making sure that these there, it ensures that only your true mail server. One of the things that the bad actors are doing now, since most companies are doing this, is instead of trying to get access to your true domain email, is they're going to register a fake email that's very close. So for our, it's iler.com, they might replace that I with a 1 or with an L. And so it could be LLER. We had a situation that we saw from one of our clients that someone impersonated their domain and they had an M in their domain name. They replaced the M with an R and an N. And so putting those two together looks very close to an M in lowercase. And so it was very hard to see. But again, if you use a different domain, your SPF, your DKIM and DMARC records are not going to block that. That's only going to be for your legitimate domain. So creating these fake domains is becoming very popular for the bad guys. Impersonation protection, or CEO fraud protection. So most companies know and will verify any significant financial transactions that didn't come from a face-to-face meeting with that company's leadership. So, however, in early 2024, scammers used AI to do a deep fake video. It was a video conference, and they had audio, and they impersonated a multinational UK engineering firm CFO, and even had several colleagues there. So it was a realistic video conference. They convinced a Hong Kong-based finance employee to carry out transfers totaling around $25 million. So these imposters reportedly stitched together convincing likenesses from publicly available footage. They created an urgency around a confidential deal and then directed funds into several Hong Kong bank accounts. And by breaking up into smaller ones, it doesn't attract the attention like a $25 million transaction would do. And a lot of times those higher transactions have different delays and limitations on there. An example that you may have seen of this type of AI deepfake is on America's Got Talent. They had a singer come up and they had a camera in front of him. And so he's singing a song live, but they used that camera and AI to put on Simon Cowell's face on the singer and made it sound like him as well. And so this is live, and it looked like Simon Cowell was singing this song. And that's where AI is today. Technology's there. And we've got to do our due diligence to protect ourselves and our companies against these deep fakes. URL detonation. So what this does is we get an email link. It's going to test the suspicious links basically safely and automatically. It's a security technique where we'll open it up in what's called a sandbox. So it's kind of like a disposable virtual environment to see what it really does before it's given to that end user to click it. So we have email security that will do this for you. So any links that are suspicious, we open it up, we test it, see does it go to a legitimate website, as a trusted website, those types of things. If we find concerns about it, we'll quarantine that and it never goes to the end user. But then we send a quarantine report so the end user does know that they get this email and why we blocked it for them. The evidence for these things, email security reports and block threat statistics. Keep these documented. It can be a report that you have there. Last one on the slide is backup disaster recovery with immutability. And you keep hearing this word, immutability. Do the 3-2-1 rule plus immutable storage so that hackers can't delete it or encrypt it or change it. Monthly restore tests with documented results, or use a tool like we're using where it's automated. In that monthly restore test, we get a screenshot where it actually brings up the server and shows that the server can actually be booted, and does a test for the number of files and things like that, make sure there aren't any issues there. So the evidence you're going to keep there are your backup logs and successful restore test reports, and this shows that you're doing your due diligence as well. So each of these controls we're looking at solves multiple problems. They protect you, they satisfy customer requirements, and they can reduce insurance costs. All right, the next 5 we're going to look at. So privileged access management, or PAM, and just-in-time elevation. Administrative access should only be given when it's needed and only for as long as it's needed. It should automatically be removed after that privilege after it's used. And then what you do for evidence here is you have a PAM access report and elevation logs that shows the users that were granted the access, how long it was given, and that it was actually revoked afterwards. Hardening baselines with configuration drift alerts. So these are CIS benchmarks that provide proven secure configurations. Automated alerts when systems drift from standards we talked about. If MFA gets disabled, for example, if there's a new local admin, if the EDR software stopped, firewalls turned off. All these things are not things that should happen, and you want to be notified when they do. So these alerts should be automated, and then for the evidence, you just do a configuration compliance report and drift notification. So this is going to tell you anytime these alerts came out and kind of what the remediation was to those alerts. Security awareness training and measurable KPIs. So we recommend quarterly training with simulated phishing tests. Statistics show that after an employee does this phishing awareness or security awareness training, that 5 to 6 months after that training, they start clicking, and that the frequency of when they're clicking on things they shouldn't goes up. That's why we recommend quarterly. And so also things change. And so by doing a 20-minute quarterly training, it just helps employees keep security at the front of mind, and also teaches them about any new threats that might be coming out. And then again, the simulated phishing tests, we test to make sure they are actually practicing what they learned. The target is to have less than a 5% failure rate on these phishing simulations. And again, if you have more than that, it's an opportunity to train, educate, and teach them, and let them know, again, that they could be causing the company harm. The evidence for this is the training completion rates and the phishing simulation results. Third-party risk reviews tied to data classification. So this is vendor security requirements based on what data they have access to, and then do annual reviews using existing evidence. And so again, this is trusting what they provide, but you'll do vendor risk assessments and compliance attestations, making sure that they have signed off on what your requirements are for them. Incident response tabletops biannually with post-mortems. All right, so this is going to be practicing your incident response with realistic scenarios. Document lessons learned and action items. So tabletop exercises, we'll actually dive into this a little bit later on as well. But basically, this is going to be a report where you go through a scenario with all the people that would be active in a scenario. So whether you have a business email breach, whether you have a ransomware attack, whether you have servers going, just crashing, catastrophic hardware failure, you could have, a fire in your data center. I mean, there are things that don't have to be necessarily malware or cyber security related. You can have natural disasters that happen as well. So the evidence for tabletop exercises, do the reports and improvement action plans. And again, the results and the purpose of these tabletops is to walk through the scenarios and different scenarios a couple times a year to make sure you're ready to respond when a real incident happens. So notice the pattern that every control has a defined metric and it produces evidence artifacts. So this isn't just security, it's business-ready security that proves itself. So when then a customer asks, how do you handle privileged access? You don't say, we're working on it. You can send them to your PAM access report from last week and you're ready to go. So let me share a story that illustrates why this all matters for your bottom line. So remember Lydia from our opening. So here's what happened when she lost that $2 million contract. 6 months later, she had implemented a proper security framework. When the next big customer sent her a security questionnaire, instead of panicking, she opened up her evidence binder. The customer asked her for her incident response plans. Boom, she had it. They wanted proof of backup testing. She had monthly logs. They needed vulnerability management evidence. She had SLA reports and closure verification. The entire process took days instead of 3 months. So your security program directly impacts your contract velocity. How fast can you respond to customer security requirements? And we're seeing more and more of our customers have to respond to their customers and their supply chain for this. The deal size. Customers pay more for vendors that they trust. Renewal rates. Existing customers stay when they're going to be comfortable and confident in your security and making sure that you're not going to be a risk to them and their customers. Insurance costs. Better security equals lower premiums, especially if you end up having a cyber incident. I mean, that's going to impact your premiums for years to come. Here's what most businesses don't realize. When your competitors are scrambling to answer security questionnaires, you're winning deals. Your documented security program and all of your proof that you gather becomes a competitive differentiator. Customers aren't just buying your product anymore. They're doing business with you with the confidence that you won't be the vendor that gets them breached. So let me show you what an audit ready by design would actually look like. So this would be your vendor security package, everything you need to answer customer questionnaires on day one. So we've got several sections here. So the first one, executive security overview. This will be 1 to 2 pages. It's going to be a high-level summary of your security program. You're going to have framework alignments like NIST CSF 2.0 and CIS controls. Those are things that your customer is going to recognize because they're industry standards. Key metrics and achievements. What are the different things that you're doing for cybersecurity? And this is a short, quick one. So for the executives that want the summary but aren't going to dive into the weeds, this will give them a comfort level. The next, excuse me, is the policy set and control matrix. Complete policy library mapped to those frameworks. So the NIST CSF 2.0 to CIS 3.0 alignment. Your IG1 baseline with an IG2 roadmap. And this shows progression with maturity. It doesn't mean you have to be all in and have everything completed, because this is a process and it's an ongoing process. It's not going to be one and done. But if you've already done your IG1 and show you've got a roadmap to IG2, that's going to give them a level of confidence to do business with you. And your evidence binder, it has the list of all the reports, the things we just talked about for each of those sections, and what evidence you need to keep track of. So your MFA enforcement reports, your EDR coverage and detection capabilities, your patch management compliance, your backup and restore test results. All these types of things should be in your evidence binder, and it's very easily accessible, and you can provide that upon request. Incident response and business continuity summaries. List your tabletop exercise dates and outcomes, and incident response procedures, and the contact information. So this way, when you actually have a real incident for one that you've already done that tabletop exercise for, you're prepared because you've walked through it, and it's not as scary, and it runs a lot smoother since you've practiced it. And then business continuity planning and testing results. What happens if your place of work for some reason you can't get to due to some type of natural disaster? How are you going to continue? Can you access things remotely? Those types of things. So make sure that all those things are planned out. You've got the procedures in place if and when a scenario like that comes into play. Your questionnaire library, pre-completed responses to common questions in questionnaires. So a lot of things that insurance and customers are going to be asking you are all in there. So you've got your SIG-Lite, CIQ-Lite, standard DDQ responses. These are going to be things that help you fill out those questionnaires and just help you fill them out more efficiently. And then you can customize them if necessary for specific customer requirements. If you're dealing with customers on an annual basis, make sure you keep those, because then you're going to be able to answer them quicker next year. Just be prepared. These things will typically get more advanced as they're higher threats, and there are compliances that have more requirements as well. Your assurance calendar. The assurance calendar will have your policy review schedule. It shows, again, it's not one and done. You're continually reviewing these things, your control testing cycles, your training and exercise calendar, and it just proves that you are committed to an ongoing excellence in security and making sure this is something that will help you be as secure as possible as an organization. So this isn't a collection of documents you hope to work together. It's an integrated security program, and it's going to tell a story about how you protect customer data and maintain business continuity. When customers evaluate your security, they're not just checking boxes. They're evaluating your business maturity. So we talked early on about safe harbor. And so here's something a lot of business leaders don't know. There are some states now that reward you legally for following these cybersecurity frameworks. Ohio's Data Protection Act from 2018 and Iowa's House File 553 that happened in 2023 provide what's called an affirmative defense. What that means is if someone sues you claiming you didn't do enough to protect their data, you can provide and you can prove you maintain a cybersecurity program that's aligned to a recognized framework such as NIST CSF and or CIS controls. The law is going to provide you additional legal protection. The requirements are very straightforward here. You pick a recognized framework. Ohio does both NIST CSF and CIS controls. You document your policies and controls. That's what we've been discussing today. You maintain an assurance calendar that shows that you've been doing regular reviews and updates, but you've got to preserve that evidence too. Your evidence binder becomes legally valuable at that time. So you can show that these are all the steps you've taken. These are how we've continually done, and it's not something that we've done once, put away, and forgotten about. So safe harbor doesn't eliminate you and your duty to maintain reasonable security, but it rewards you for doing security with discipline and documentation. So it's not going to be a get out of jail free card, but it's a legal recognition that following proven frameworks demonstrates reasonable care. So think about this. You're going to implement security controls anyway. These laws essentially say, if you document your security properly and follow these recognized standards, we'll give you legal credit for doing it the right way. It's like getting a discount on your legal risk for doing what you should be doing anyway. And these laws apply if you do business in the states, even if you're headquartered somewhere else. As more states follow suit, documented security programs will become even more valuable. And our headquarters here in Ohio happened to be one of the first 3 states to implement the safe harbor rules there. So let me tell you about a real story about Mike. Mike was the IT director at a regional logistics company. They had about 200 employees. His story shows exactly what this transformation is going to look like in real practice. So when Mike called us, this was his reality. They didn't have any multi-factor authentication on administrator accounts. Patching happened when we remembered or when something broke. They had automated patching set up in some things, but if there's a problem with that patch, there was no process in order to make sure that someone followed through to help get that patch installed. Backups were running, but no one had tested a restore in years. No process for evaluating vendor security existed. And customer questionnaires took months and required hiring outside consultants to make sure they were answering those things accurately. Does that sound familiar? So here's what changed in just 4 months. So in month 1, he completed the foundation, which was the MFA implemented on all accounts, phishing resistant MFA for admins, IG1 controls, inventory and implementation plan, and the evidence binder structure was created. In month 2, the controls were implemented. Critical patch SLA established, which was 14 days, the maximum that we recommend. EDR was deployed with 24/7 monitoring via MDR. And then backup restore testing, and they had their first successful restore in 2 years. And that was a huge risk mitigation process that allowed them to sleep easier at night. Month 3 was the process maturing. And so that is security awareness training was launched. They did their first tabletop exercise, and that was completed. And then vendor risk tiering processes were implemented. So they got with their vendors and got all the documentation through that process. But then you go into the measurement and optimization. Their phishing simulation failure rate was below 5%. Their quarterly restore testing showed consistent RTO, or the recovery time objective achievement was there. And their first customer questionnaire was completed in-house in under 2 weeks instead of months. So the results were transformative for Mike. So insurance renewal was improved, and when they gave him all the documentation, they actually had a 15% premium reduction. Customer renewals, there were 2 major contracts that were renewed in under 14 days each, when again, previously these took months. New business, they won a contract specifically because they could demonstrate security and maturity. And then operational efficiency. They had a 60% reduction in time spent on compliance activities. And this is time well spent that you could spend on other things in your business. So imagine cutting your security questionnaire response time from months to days, and then reducing your insurance premiums at the same time. Would that free up your team to focus on other things for the business. So one thing I'm going to point out here, again, we talked about RTO, and that's recovery time objective, and something that we're seeing other frameworks do. I just want to point out. So there's some recent attacks near us here in Ohio. Last year, the city of Cleveland was hit, and they were down for 2 weeks. This year, the Cuyahoga County Courts, which is the Cleveland court system, was down also for 2 weeks when they got hit with an attack. Lorain County, which is the county that we are in, they had an incident and they were down for a period of time. So most of these had a recovery time of 2 weeks, which is roughly 300 hours in order to get their systems back online. There's new proposed HIPAA requirements for healthcare organizations that are saying that you should have 72 hours in order to do recovery. That's only 3 days. So the HIPAA requirements that are proposed are saying that if you get some type of cyber event, you have to be able to recover within 3 days or you're going to be fined for that. That's significant when you talk about 300 hours, in 2 weeks for these other, multiple attacks that have happened here recently. And that is close to home for us. So now you might be thinking, this all sounds great, but who has time to manage all that? So that's exactly why compliance as a service exists. So most small to mid-sized businesses and mid-market companies face the same challenge. They need enterprise-level security programs, but don't have enterprise-level security teams. You need someone who understands both the technical requirements and the business implications. And they have to have the time and expertise to keep up with the changing requirements because this is ongoing. So here's what our CAS model, our compliance as a service model, looks like. We've got 4 parts to it. Our first is our vCISO governance, and that's our virtual chief information security officer. So it's a fractional officer that helps with your risk register. And so we develop and maintenance on that. We do quarterly security roadmap and budget planning, board level reporting and communication. So we talk to your leadership team, and it's not just a response. It's okay, where do we need to be going in the future? We look at these compliances. If you're a healthcare company, for example, what are these new HIPAA requirements that you're going to have to do and plan so you're ready for them instead of having to do a knee-jerk reaction when they are now required. And then strategic security decision support. The next step is implementation and continuous monitoring. That's control, implementation, and optimization. We'll create real-time dashboards and KPI tracking, make sure we're on track for everything. You'll see exactly where we are and how secure you are. Automated evidence collection. So that's super important, and for your evidence locker as well. And in case you have any audits or clients that need to see that information. And then exception management and remediation. So if there's a problem out there, we manage that. We remediate it. It's kind of tough to say, and then get you back on your feet again. So evidence management and DDQ response, so the maintenance of your evidence binder. We have pre-completed questionnaire responses, so we help you with all those questionnaires you've got to do. We have custom customer requirement responses. So again, when your supply chain or your customers are going to ask you about cybersecurity, we help with that. And then your vendor security assessment report. We can help assess your vendors and make sure they are not going to be a security risk for you doing business with them. And then quarterly executive reporting. KPI trends and exception analysis will be done quarterly. We'll have the roadmap progress. And this is going to show you, everything we've done so far and where we have to go. And then any budget variances that might come through there. The risk landscape changes, what are the new threats that are out there and recommendations to remediate these risks, and then have some business impact metrics and to share again with your executive team. So you get a complete security program, not just tools or incident tickets. So you get a security executive without the executive salary, implementation expertise without the learning curve, evidence management without the administrative burden, customer confidence without the compliance headaches, and your internal team then focuses on running your business while we ensure your security program runs itself. So before you leave today, let me give you 5 things that you can start on this week. These are quick wins that will immediately improve your security posture and begin building your evidence trail. So start off right away, enforce MFA everywhere, enable multi-factor authentication on all business accounts. Start obviously with email and cloud services, and document who has access and take screenshots of those MFA settings. Next, set your patch SLAs. So establish a 14-day SLA for all critical security patches. And then identify who's going to be responsible for each system type, who's the owner for that. And then create a simple tracking spreadsheet so you can make sure that these things are getting done. And if you have any issues with those, that you can track those as well. Test a backup and document it. So pick one critical system and do a full restore from backup. And make sure that your backups are as secure and good as you think they are. You want to document the process, the timing, and any issues that you ran through this. This will help you also determine if you have an incident, you've got to do a full restore. What is that time frame for getting back up and running? Save the restore log, and this becomes valuable evidence as well. Start email security configuration. We're hoping this is done already, but if not, make sure you enable SPF, DKIM records. Your IT team should be able to help with that. Begin your demarc and monitoring mode. If you're not using it now, monitoring mode will let you know what emails would be blocked, but it doesn't block them. And then when you're ready, you can set them to reject, and they do get blocked then as soon as your team's ready. Document the configuration then in your evidence binder. See that repeated thing? And then review and secure all admin accounts. List all accounts with administrative privileges, remove unnecessary admin access, and ensure all admin accounts do have MFA enabled. These aren't just security improvements, they're the beginning of your evidence trail. So every screenshot, every log, every documentation effort compounds. So 6 months from now, when a customer asks you about your backup testing, you'll have 6 months of monthly restore logs to show them. So start building your security story today, one documented control at a time. So let me show you what success looks like when you have a mature security program. This is a screenshot of one of the dashboards that we've talked about. So you've got your IG1 completion percentage, your foundation strength, with a target of 100%. It'll be nice and green. Your IG2 roadmap progress, that's your advancement towards sophisticated, with your target being based on what the risk assessment, and that'll be different for every organization. Your operational security health, your time to patch critical vulnerabilities. Are you doing these in less than 14 days? Your phishing simulation failure trend. What is your human firewall effectiveness? Are you under that 5% goal, and is it still decreasing? Your business continuity readiness, your ability to react to some type of disaster, whether it's a cyber event, whether it's type of natural disaster, or just a hardware failure. We know companies that are running servers that are over 10 years old. Most major manufacturers, Dell and HP, will say your server end of life is at 7, and they won't support them past 7 years. And so if you have a 12-year-old, 15-year-old server, that could fail at any particular time. And if you have your core business processes on there, that's a huge risk. So make sure that you've got plans for if and when that server crashes on how you're going to maintain your business and continue to operate. And then your exception burn down rate. How quickly after you find a security gap do you close that security gap? And you should see these obviously decreasing monthly. And you've got executive risk communication. So that's the risk score color coding. Green's going to be low risk, ambers or yellow is your managed risk, and red then is immediate attention is needed. So this isn't a pretty chart. It's a security story that's told in business language. People in your business and your customers understand it. So again, the colors show your customers you're a low risk vendor partner when things are green. Your trend line demonstrates continuous improvement and investment. This is not something that you're just going to set off to the side and hope it runs itself. Exception tracking. This shows that you will find risks. It's not going to be perfect. And risks continually coming out, as new threats evolve and as new vulnerabilities in your software come out. These risks come up, and you've got to take place rather than ignore it. You have to take the steps to remediate those instead of ignore it. The quarterly cadence then shows security is embedded in your business operations. So that way, when the customers ask about your security, schedule a meeting, go gather information. If you decide to, you can send them a link to this dashboard or screenshot of the dashboard and say, here's our current security posture. What specific areas would you like to discuss? And that's the difference between hoping you're secure and knowing you are. And that's a huge difference. All right, we've covered a lot of ground today. So let me summarize real quick your path forward to make sure you have everything you need to take action. So today, you've learned why security frameworks aren't just compliance checkboxes, they're business enablers. I've talked about how NIST CSF 2.0 and CIS controls will work together to create a practical security program. What the three-phase roadmap is from ad hoc security to competitive advantage. And then specific controls that deliver the most protection for your investment. How are you going to build that evidence trail that satisfies customers, insurers, and auditors? We gave you the next steps to take, the ones immediately. Implement the 5 quick wins we discussed. Assess where you stand on that IG1 completion. And then over the next 30 days, complete a security readiness assessment. Begin building your evidence binder and identify where are your biggest security gaps. The next is your strategic timeframe, which is the next 90 days. Develop your security roadmap, decide on internal versus outsourced implementation, and begin phase 1 of your security program. So because you've taken the time to listen, hopefully this has been valuable to you. You've learned a lot about these compliances and how you can help your business stay protected. But we've got a special offer for you. So we offer a complimentary network security analysis, but we are limited to only do 5 of these a month. And this analysis will help you document any security issues that you have, give you the information you need to start remediating those issues. And if we don't find any issues, that's going to give you the peace of mind that your IT provider is doing their job by keeping your network secure. So remember Lydia's story from the very beginning. The difference between losing a $2 million contract and winning it wasn't the size of her security budget. It was simply having a documented framework line security program that could prove itself. Your security program is really a business enabler. The question isn't whether you can afford to implement these frameworks, it's whether you can afford not to. So let's go ahead and open it up to the questions I'm going to stop the sharing of this and taking a look here at anything that may have come up. All right, we've got a couple here. So the first one is, do we need a vCISO or can IT own this? That's a good question. Normally, IT is going to run your day-to-day operations, your help desk, and do what they have known to do. But your vCISO or fractional, one of the things that isn't covered by your normal IT department is it gives you a risk alignment. It gives you a roadmap for where you want to go and get to, and we work with your leadership team for that. It covers the metrics. A lot of times your IT department is worried on taking care of the tickets and things like that, closing them and going on to the next ticket. And then audit prep. Audit prep, if you know, especially if you have annual required audits like a lot of organizations do, then we help you prepare for those, but without the full-time cost of someone to do that. All right, great question. Got a few more here. How often do policies need reviewed? So that's a good question. I'll give you 2 answers, at least annually. And so once a year, whether you think they've changed or not. But if there are any changes, for example, any new systems that have been implemented, any new mergers, any incidents, you want to go through and review those policies to make sure they're accurate. And if you need to make additional changes, implement them at that time. All right, what about legacy systems we can't patch? That is a great question, and you're not alone out there. So we have many different systems that for one reason or another are on antiquated systems. For example, we've got a company that has software that will not run on Windows even 10. So they're running on Windows 7, but the software is still critical for them. So what we have done is we do compensating controls. So we do network isolation. We put them on a virtual machine that's inside of a current system that has protection on there. We do application allow listing. We have increased monitoring. And then we also do aggressive testing and firewall controls to make sure only exactly who needs access to have that access to that system does. And so those are things that mitigate the risks, to a system that you can't patch anymore. So there are some solutions there. The idea is to get them into a virtual environment so that you can put new hardware in there that does follow these compliance and is patchable. And if you get into that scenario, then basically you could run indefinitely on that software. You don't have to worry about the ancient hardware crashing. So one of the things I hear a lot is, I feel we're too small for this. So I'm only, a couple people. What, should we be doing this? And that's where the IG1 comes in. And so that's explicitly designed for baseline security, and it doesn't matter your company size. The framework will scale down as well as scale up. And safe harbor laws reward right-side programs, not just enterprise ones. So they are companies that only have one employee and still do this for that protection and the security that it offers. Another question here, just a second. So aren't tools enough without all the policies and evidence? I mean, the tools have definitely come a long ways from what they have been, but tools without these governance, there are really gaps that are created, and both auditors and attackers are going to find them. So frameworks ensure comprehensive coverage and provide evidence trail that proves your tools are working. One of the reasons we're seeing these changes in the framework, such as PCI compliance, HIPAA compliance, the FTC safeguards, and even version 2.0 here of the NIST CSF, is the threat landscape is changing and evolving so much that these compliances are making sure that the customers or the organizations that have to follow these compliances are doing their due diligence. And of course, the last question, what if we can't afford this? So start with IG1. These are quick wins. There are many configuration changes that are not purchases, and so there's not cost. It's just a time effort into this. So consider the insured discount potential and avoided downtime, because consider what, again, a 2-week downtime would do to your business. So the question shouldn't be cost, it's return on investment. Can you afford not to do this? If you get hit with ransomware and close your doors for 2 weeks to fix, how is that going to impact your clients, your supply chain, your reputation? Are you going to keep your clients? Are people going to continue to work on you? I don't have the exact statistics, but I know there are many small to mid-sized businesses that do go out of business after they get hit with a cyber event such as this. So don't want you to be one of those statistics. Well, that's the last question we have. I appreciate you sticking with us. So just in closing reminder, program thinking, not project thinking. This is not going to be a one and done. We're going to do this project, get it set up for you, and be ready to go. This is something that has to be continually evaluated, and hopefully I've communicated that. Evidence collection, always. You've got to make sure that you're keeping track of the evidence and everything through here. Alignment to recognize frameworks for credibility and legal protection. So again, following this CSF and CIS controls, that's going to protect you. It's, I would call it industry standard frameworks that are out there. And the customers, the auditors, your insurance providers are going to recognize that. So if we can help you in any way, if you want that free assessment, make sure you reach out to us. You can contact us. Our phone number, the 800 number is 877-250-4537. If you want to sign up for that free analysis, just reach out to us at iler.com/analysis. That's ILER.com/analysis. It was on the previous slide there. Or shoot us an email, info@iler.com. Say, hey, you mentioned a free network assessment. We'd like to take you up on that, and we'll be in contact and can get that scheduled for you. So appreciate your time today.